Hello and welcome to another episode of the Restaurateur. I'm your host, JD. If you're new to this channel, please don't forget to subscribe or give us a follow, depending on where you're watching or listening to this from. So you'll stay up to date with the latest business discussions that we discuss here that could help you run your business or live your life in general. It's really disheartening when you've already opened up shop after all the preparations and exhausting thinking and doing things just to get it done, but no one is really coming in. Or in the case of those who are adjusting to the new normal, like moving their places online, people might have started messaging your page or your website, but they're not really closing orders just yet. We've been there. When we first opened our steakhouse 9 years ago, the first ever business venture that we ever had in the restaurant industry, we had really high hopes that people will actually support us and walk with us through the whole journey all throughout the way. At first, there was a bit of an opening hype because our family was there and our friends were there during the first few weeks, and then followed by a few people from the respected media outlets and newspapers that came to taste our food and wrote about it. And their writings informed people, which created like a steady flow for a while that kept us going. But then months passed and we actually were stuck facing a dilemma. Why isn't there anyone walking in anymore? No, we had no doubts on the way that our food tasted. We even knew that our ambiance back then was acceptable enough compared to other restaurants that were in the area. And I must say, our service, knowing it was led by us, the owners, was on point. Seeing those empty seats, however, was really unsettling for us. This was the very moment that gave us all the chills and the fears that we thought we'd never have. And knowing that we were just nursing grads, just some kids who were trying out our luck in the restaurant industry, an area that we're not really familiar with, just added more to the anxiety. At this point, we knew we were facing a problem that we didn't have an idea on how to solve. And our inexperience in dealing with these kinds of things in this kind of scenario was actually seen pretty well in the way we handled the situation. And since we didn't really know any better at that time, we started clinging on to these three thoughts that made us really feel like we didn't really have a reason or hand in the way that things were going. It kind of gave us a real good excuse to not blame ourselves for what was happening. As bad as it may seem, I really want to discuss these things with you so that whenever you encounter these thoughts for yourself, you end up throwing them aside and start actually focusing on the solutions. Now, our first skewed realization led us to think that we were really not getting any good enough foot traffic at the time because our friends and family weren't supportive enough. Before you even start using this same excuse for yourself, let me be the one to tell you first, please don't do it. Businesses are supposed to be built so you can generate income from people you don't know. You have to find your way through the market, get people to buy from you and love you for the product or the services that you offer. Please keep this in mind that you didn't go through all the hassle of putting up this business just to rely on your family and friends. You know, they're just like regular customers. Sometimes they want to eat at your place, but then sometimes they want to try something new, so they move on to another place. And if your food is really that good and your service is just worth coming back for, eventually they'll start walking back in. You need to understand also that there are times when you do this yourself. You feel like eating at one place, and then when you crave for another food, you move on to one place no matter how much you love the other place. You see, the problem isn't really in your family or friends' poor attendance when you need them to be there, but in the number of potential clients who know that your shop really exists. Our second mistaken idea was to believe that there was a magic formula or a quick fix way to get people to return even just a couple of days from their previous visit. This might not seem so wrong, but believe me, it did take us on a path that I just don't want to go back to. This way of thinking just got us scrambling and out of focus just to find different menu additions or whatever things that we can adjust to get the customers to come back quickly. Not only did it keep our focus off track, but it also led us to waste time and money experimenting on dishes that weren't even in line with our concept, just because we thought people just wanted something new so they can come back sooner or later. The downside of it was our menu was all over the place. Like I said, It didn't really represent what concept we were trying to build. And we ended up with a really cluttered, disorganized menu with each dish not really complementing each other. Later on, we realized that in looking at our own dining behavior when we eat out, we also tend to act the same. We like a special dish on one restaurant, but then when we crave for another dish that is specific to another restaurant, we go to that other restaurant and eat that food. You know, I could love this restaurant to death, but then this other restaurant is offering a menu item that's really special and that's not really present on the other restaurant. So, depending on our cravings, we go to whatever place that we come to think of that's really specialized on that dish. And that observation just made us realize that it's okay to have a menu that's very limited and specific, because your loyal customers will always come back to you whenever their craving for your specialty comes along. The problem is not in the huge gap between your customers' visits, but in the number of potentially new clients who can come in during the lean days when your regular customers are not present. The third misconception that we always love to use when we were at a really tight situation is the assumption that people are just present as long as the hype is there. Now, this way of thinking almost got us into a state of inactivity and laziness. It felt like we found the ultimate scapegoat that we could blame aside from looking at ourselves whenever the lean days started coming. This whole way of thinking just sucked the creativity out of us. It just didn't really put us in a mood that had us thinking of the ideas of making our brand stronger and more attractive to people. I guess it really placed us in a really complacent position that when things go tough, and eventually, if we decide to close up shop, we could easily cling onto this excuse that blames the customers more than looking at our own faults. We thought we could really just be comfortable using this excuse whenever people asks us why we're going down the drain. We could always say, we closed because people weren't supportive enough. They were just here for the hype. And now there's a new shop opening on the other side of town that's causing another type of hype. People are rushing over that place. I guess people are just behaving like that because they just want to be part of the hype. I know it might sound silly, but a lot of entrepreneurs starting in the restaurant space might think about it that way. And I discourage you, or really discourage you from using that type of mindset when things go south. You should not forget that brands aren't built on hype. Brands and the fans' loyalty to that brand are built behind the brand's unfailing commitment to fulfill the promise that they make to their consumers. That consistency, no matter how slow, as long as it's steady, then shapes the customer's loyalty to that brand, which in turn brings customers back and back to your store, continually creating a buzz about it even after a few years in the business. The problem does not lie in the inability of your customers to support or sustain the hype that your new brand has. The problem lies in the number of people who can be potentially your clients who will try your product one of these days and fall in love with it, and then in turn tell people about it so their presence can sustain the hype that your brand is causing. The more people know about you, the longer the duration that they can sustain the hype that your brand has. Up to that point when it's not really hype anymore, but it's just pure brand loyalty. I assure you, if you put up your own business, whether be it a physical restaurant or an online food brand, as long as you believe that your food is good enough for people to come back for, and the service that you've designed really captures the loyalty of people, the problem of not having a steady flow of foot traffic might simply lie on your weak marketing strategies. From my experience the past 9 years of being a restaurateur, no matter how many dishes you put on your menu, or no matter what changes you make on your service or your ambiance, if there's no marketing plan to get the word out there, let the people know that you actually exist, no one will come in and no one will place their orders. As human beings that are capable of deciding for themselves where and when they want to eat something, there will surely be days when people will decide to not go to your place because there's another shop they want to visit. Eventually, however, if you play your cards right, no matter how long it takes, as long as they love and crave your food, when that craving strikes them, they will eventually come back to you. But until that day arrives, you have to have these little strategies that will let other people know that your store exists, that will persuade them to try your brand and your products before those regular customers that you're waiting for will actually come back. And that's how you slowly build up your market and your audience from the beginning. And it just goes on and on and on, and it will never stop even if you're on a full house basis every single day. Marketing never really sleeps, it never really stops, no matter the size of the business. Because if marketing was just something to be done if you're a starting business or if you're just a really small business trying to make it big, then the big international food brands and food chains wouldn't put so much effort in their marketing schemes right now, would they? If those international companies are still at it with their marketing every now and then, even after years of success and fortunes, what excuses you from doing the same for your company? And that concludes another episode of the Restaurateur. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I hope you guys learned something. Do not use those 3 excuses that I've mentioned to get yourself away from self-scrutiny when things go down south. Again, there's a lot more things that you can do aside from blaming other people or other instances for the situation that your business is in. Be creative enough and be responsible enough to take actions to improve your current situation. Again, thank you so much for tuning in. Don't stop making those marketing strategies and getting people to know about your brand. It's either now or never. See you on the next one.